You are now watching Lesage, the best place to learn about competitive Pokemon TCG. Let's get it! Yo, what's poppin' YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Lesage here. Word up. Today we're going to be covering over the top 10 decks, so hopefully you have everything in your body ready for this Monday, because there is a new deck, or a new to this list deck that is made into the top 10. That also means that a deck is dropped out. Let me know in the comments which one you think is dropped out before you watch this video. Let's spark a discussion. So if anyone wants to know, I get back to every YouTube comment. It's just one of those things that I like talking to all the people. If you want to talk a little bit more, feel free to head into our Discord. The link is in the description. If you're missing any of the cards for these decks, go to PTCGO plug in code ZLESAGE5. Again, link in the description. And all of these lists have a copy and pastable version and a video reference in the pinned comments. So if you want to learn a little bit more about those decks, or copy and paste them right into PTCGO or PTCG Live whenever you watch this video, you could do that right there. I put a lot of effort into these decks, so hopefully you enjoy this video. That being said, let's jump into our number 10 spot and see exactly what's up. Starting it off with number 10, we have a new entry to the list, and a deck that we've seen in the past before, Eternatus VMAX. Now, this deck, after making top 4 at my late night series events, seemed to have a ripple effect on the metagame and saw a few more placements. So while I thought that we'd see that with Victini, and surprise, surprise, there's no Victini on this list this week. I'm sorry, peeps. I know it won my tournament. It did nothing really after that. So Lee is really the one who was playing that deck, piloted it well, then everyone else was like, nah. So with this deck being added into our metagame, we had to take a deck out of our top 10 deck. So it's really like interesting. The goal here is to really hit a bunch of damage by using Eternal Zone and Dread End in combination. Where do I see this deck going in the future? I could see this deck very easily dipping out of our top 10 until we get Ultra Ball in the format, which is going to be in our February-March set. So it might pop back in here or there, especially with things like Mew VMAX and Shadow Rider and Dragapult being weak to Dark, but we also have to understand that this deck might not be as good as other Dark decks that we have access to. Hopping into number 9, and from previously number 9 last week, we have ZACIAN Zamazenta. Now, this deck just seems to be, I say it every week, I feel like it feels like a glorified theme deck where you're just trying to use Intrepid Sword, hit energies, and attack a lot with Brave Blade. It's not like it's poorly positioned, it's not well positioned most of the time. It's just like an alright deck that is not, it's a great introduction to Pokemon in the nicest way. If you play this deck for another reason, that's totally cool. If you play this deck because you're totally a budget player and this is your first real deck, that's totally cool. But in terms of like playing it for an actual tournament, I'm not really too much about it. A few players have been experimenting with Mew from Celebrations, so if you are looking into this deck, keep that in mind and see exactly where those lists are going, but they are not necessarily as placing as high as this current variant of the list. I think this deck it's been number 9, number 10, number 8, like it's a bottom 3 kind of deck, so 8, 9, 10, and it could eventually fall out if E-Turn were to jump back into the metagame a little bit more. Jumping into our number 8 spot and falling a couple spots from its previous number 6 spot is Rapid Strike Urshifu. Now, I keep on flip-flopping back and forth between Rapid Strike Urshifu with Inteleon Normal or adding in the Galarian Moltres V. With Dragapult's continuous domination at the top, this deck cannot handle Dragapult. So this deck with Moltres might cause Dragapult to fall a little bit from those top placements, but it is really one of those things where if Dragapult or Psychic-type Pokemon aren't necessarily seeing so much success, this deck is going to, you know what I'm saying? You don't want Galarian Moltres. It's always that, do I want to have a hard counter? Do I not want to have a hard counter? Will the hard counter work? Will it fail? Does it matter? Does it not matter? In this case, I think it does matter. So I'd say this is a solid build for future weeks, at least until we get Fusion Strike out there. Again, Galarian Moltres V seems very good. If you are playing anything with, because Mew VMAX coming out in Fusion Strike is weak to Dark, so maybe start preparing for this build if you are a Rapid Strike player. Beyond that, I think that this deck is probably like well positioned. It's in the lower half of the top 10, so the 5, 6, 7, 8 spots. And I mean, maybe it could fall into the 8, 9, 10 spots, but you can see like it's not a top 5 deck right now. I think it's a strong metagame call for when you do want to play it, but that's really where I would play it. So maybe experiment with this one at your own risk. Sliding into our number 7 spot and following all the way from number 2 is SUICUNE Ludicolo. Now, this is one that's really surprising to me, and I'll let you know exactly where I'm at with the current state of Pokemon and online competitive play. With PTCG Live coming up around the corner, a lot of players have been like, peace out PTCGO, we're checking out a month early. This has caused kind of Chill TCG, which used to be the largest events on a week-by-week basis, they are no longer running. So right now, that means that since I was previously the second largest event on a weekly basis for the past couple months or 3 months, whatever, I've taken over the number 1 spots. There's not too many events that we can observe that are above 50 players online. I think it's under 10 events. So if players just decide not to play decks like SUICUNE Ludicolo, and I'll actually just, spoiler alert, Ice Rider SUICUNE did not make this list. So those decks went from being, in previous weeks, Ice Rider was all the way at number 5, and SUICUNE Ludicolo was at number 2. If players are just not playing these decks for tournaments, of course they cannot perform. Now, we've had SUICUNE perform to a certain degree. I'm not trying to say that it hasn't performed. It was very tight with other decks. I think players right now are kind of in an experimental phase. So my usual rules of these are top 5 decks, I still 100% firmly believe in. And you can see that, like, as much as number 7 is 2 spots off of number 5, if this was a number 5 deck, I wouldn't necessarily be as surprised. That being said, things have shifted, and this week got a little weird. We did add Eternatus into the deck, or into the mix, and a lot of other decks kind of moved up placements, and I think it's just because players found niche holes in the metagame that were allowing them to find wins. So as player participation dwindles, I mean, my events were hitting 300, now we're getting 200. Sunday Open was hitting 200, now they're getting 100. It's one of those things where players are not necessarily interested in playing PTCGO as much as they always have been. I observed those events. Of course, some of this list is based off my opinion, but I can't necessarily deny pure cold hard numbers. So this deck's slipping a little bit. I could see this deck shooting up big time next week. I think this deck is great moving into Fusion Strike as well, so definitely give this one a whirl. Sliding into number 6 and falling from number 3, we have Single Strike. So this is kind of the same speech that I just said for SUICUNE Ludicolo. You can say most things for Single Strike Urshifu. I think players are just really experimenting with the metagame in the last few weeks, where Sword and Shield to Evolving Skies are ready. We have pre-release or unofficial release tournaments for Fusion Strike coming up this weekend. So the weekend of October 30th. And it's just like the week after, I believe, is when the set should be live on PTCG Live. At least it might be a week or 2 afterwards. And then that's when players will just start playing with those. So we are very much like within the last week or 2 of this format. And that's just kind of coming up really quick. So I think players are looking to experiment. This deck, I've actually covered Gengar VMAX on my channel, and have explained how it's a very similar deck to this, using the same Single Strike engine, cutting some of the Single Strike Urshifu, and really just changing it up a little bit there. So if you haven't got a chance to check that out, check that out. Again, all these lists are available in the pinned comment, along with a reference video. So if you're wondering why I'm just speeding through these decks a little bit, it's because we've covered through these decks for the past, like, ever since the beginning of rotation. So it's been like 8 weeks now, something like that. So let's this is where it's at. I think this deck could definitely shoot up. It's a little bit low, but I think players are just experimenting with other decks. We made it to the halfway point. We are at number 5, and jumping all the way up from number 10, here's one of those big leaps, Shadow Rider Calyrex VMAX. Now, it's really one of those things where this deck gains Mew from Celebrations. You have the ZACIAN V from Celebrations as well, which allows you to accelerate energies. I mean, this deck did gain from Celebrations, one of the only few decks that did. And I think it's one of those things where Shadow Rider has always been kind of undervalued and stuff in the metagame, so it's shooting up. It definitely makes sense when it comes to this one. Now, this is the type of deck where it could stay stable at number 5, it could fall to number 10, it could fall off our entire top 10 lists. This one's a little bit of a loose cannon, so I'm gonna say that keep your eyes out on this one. I've always been a huge believer in Shadow Rider, but this one could really go anywhere. Highlighting it at number 4 and staying from number 4 last week, we got LEAFEON VMAX. Now, this is the type of deck that I've kind of fallen in love with. I think just the simplicity of attaching an energy and using Greening Cells, being able to attack with Grass Knot the following turns. While I did used to say that this is a kind of heavy combo deck by needing Galar Mine and energy and all this stuff, it just falls seamlessly because Greening Cells makes this deck more consistent than other VMAX decks that just require 2 energies. Since changed its list up a little bit by just adding an extra Grass energy, found that out in my testing that I was like, I really like the Grass energy. I think LEAFEON VMAX just seems very well positioned and has kind of become one of those just like middle decks where like you're not necessarily losing to much, you're not necessarily having the greatest matchup against everything, but you can hold your own against most of the metagame. Again, I think this deck's going to do well in Fusion Strike, and I'd say that this one's probably going to stay within the top 4 decks going forward. Sliding into number 3 and jumping all the way up from number 8, this is another one of those huge leapers this week is SYLVEON VMAX. I think SYLVEON VMAX is just, Vinny Fernandez has been one of the players who's been playing online, and their brother Gabriel also has been playing online a lot. Like, I don't want to say that they are online grinders, but they're 2 of the top players online for sure, and really have paved the way for a lot of the younger players in the game. Now, they've been playing SYLVEON a lot, and they've been doing a lot of really strong placements with this deck in the past couple weeks. So this has really caused kind of a shift to making this deck appear as high as it is. So when there's a few players who control the top of the metagame, there are definitely 2 of them, and I'd say this is really why SYLVEON hit all the way to the top. I think that this deck is probably under a top 5 deck. On a personal note, I think it's one of those things where with 1, 2, 3, 4 different kind of stage 1 VMAX lines, the deck can get a little bit weird. And I say that for any deck that has anything like that, so keep that in mind. Different typed energies. I was able to commentate over Vinny's BlackRock finals game for that event because I was the official caster, and literally it just seemed like they were missing all of the right pieces at the wrong time. This is my current iteration of the build. They've been playing a Crushing Hammer build that I'm not entirely sure how I feel about. I think it's pretty cool against Dragapult, but again, it's really one of those things where until I dive into a deck 100%, I'd rather give you what a normalized build would be than something that's a little bit more experimental or only to a few players. So no knock on that list, totally could be the wave. Maybe you could try adding Crushing Hammers in there, see if it helps you against Dragapult. Beyond that, I think that this deck, again, might just fall to like a number 6, 7, 8 spot, like it previously was at. But right now in the metagame, I guess anything truly could happen because I would have never thought that this deck was going to be a top 3 deck. Here we are in our runner-up spot at JOLTEON VMAX, jumping all the way from number 7. Again, we're seeing a lot of these jumpers, the Shadow Rider, the SYLVEON, the JOLTEON deck. These are really the big movers in this format this week. Maybe give a special peep, look out for those ones when it comes to playing in these online tournaments, because I think that those ones are performing quite well, and maybe there's something else that I might be missing. Beyond that, I think these decks are all relatively fine. They've always been top 10 decks. I think JOLTEON being at number 2, JOLTEON's always been good. It's probably been like that outside fringe 5, 6, 7 spots, and to see it at number 2 is just, it's not necessarily surprising. It just had a really strong run. JOLTEON, I don't even think it necessarily won anything or it won too much, but this is really a great second place deck, to put it in perspective. This deck came second at a lot of events overall and made top 4 at a lot of events. So it was great to get points. It wasn't really great to win the whole event. Keep that in mind. So the deck is a little bit fragile, but it has a relatively strong matchup spread, and Max Thunder Rumble's a busted attack. As much as I say that I think this deck is probably just going to stay within the top 5, really expect anything when it comes to a lot of these decks right now. I don't want it to be like, yo, Zach, that doesn't necessarily seem fair if you're the one who's making these ranking videos. I just mean like in the last couple weeks, like people are just kind of like, we're in a silly, goofy mood, right? Like everyone's just having fun with it and seeing exactly like what they can experiment before PTCG Live comes out. And I think that's when the meta is going to become a little bit more stable, but we'll figure that out once Fusion Strike drops. Here we are, number 1, and number 1 from the last week, and I think the week before, and maybe the week before that, we have Dragapult VMAX. Dragapult VMAX has been riding the top of the metagame over and over and over and over again, really showing how powerful this deck is overall. That being said, it is really one of those things where Dragapult VMAX, Max Phantom has really set the way. We do have to thank our world champion Henry Brand for winning my late night series event, because that really paved the metagame. So I ran the tournament, Henry won the tournament. You really just get a lot of things, so the coverage and everything. Dragapult VMAX did very well, and I think that's really it's just a very consistent, powerful mid-range control deck that just sees success and praise on most decks. I mean, sure, you're gonna lose to dark decks most of the time, but really, like, this is just like a clear-cut #1 deck in the formats. And I could see it totally staying this way for the foreseeable future. This deck had twice as many points, more than twice as many points as Jolteon, more points than Jolteon and SYLVEON combined, and almost as much as Jolteon, SYLVEON, and LEAFEON combined. Like, it's wild how many points this deck has, and how easily it rises to the top. So if you're not playing this deck, give this deck a try. That's your homework for this week. Period. Done. If you need any of these cards, go to PTCGO use code ZLesage5. There's even like the Dragapult promo cards that exist. They should still be on there. If not, just pick up some Rebel Clash packs or pick up some Evolving Skies packs to trade for stuff online before PTCG Live comes out. This is probably a deck that's going to be good for the foreseeable future. We'll see how this one goes, but right now I think it's just so good right now. Alright, that's what we got going on for this video today, peeps. Hopefully you enjoyed watching this video and learning a little bit more about the metagame. I know it's a little bit of a massive shift this week, but I think players are just going to kind of go wavy when it comes to the next couple weeks of our Evolving Skies metagame. What I mean by that is I think players, they don't necessarily care if they play single strike. The players that are winning with Dragapult are going to continuously win with Dragapult. The players that are experimenting with Jolteon instead of Shadow Rider and Shadow Rider instead of single strike, I think they're just trying to try new things out. Even top players like Vinny, I saw them playing Rayquaza VMAX. So it's one of those things where things just change up. Again, congratulations to everyone who's doing well in this format. And if you're looking to do a little bit better, first and foremost, this is a great place for you to start. I also offer coaching if it's anything that you're interested. Hit me up in the DMs so you can talk a little bit more about that. And just continuously try out it, try new decks, find the deck that you think is good. But following a deck, if you're not playing a deck in the top 5 or at least not the top 10, you really got to ask yourself, why are you playing that deck? Why are you playing anything that's outside of it? And I mean, sometimes you have a valid reason. Sometimes you just get too comfortable with a deck, and that's really causing you to perform less than other players. That being said, again, let's spark a discussion in the comments. Let me know in the comments what you feel about these decks, what decks you want to see in future videos, etc., etc. If you're excited about Fusion Strike, I'll get back to every single comment, like I said, so let's spark a discussion. Like this video if you haven't already, it really does help boost the YouTube algorithm, and subscribe if you haven't already. We just passed 6,500. Let's get to 7,000 if possible. That being said, I'm gonna go edit this video and get it up so we can have this video up today, because I woke up early this morning, like 7 o'clock early in the morning on the Monday, to make sure that this video was looking nice. So I'll catch up with everyone later. Peace out. I truly appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch this video. It means the world to me. And my goal with this channel is to spread my love of the game and knowledge with our entire Pokemon TCG community. If you haven't already, help signal boost this video to other Pokemon TCG fans by liking it, sharing it with your friends, and subscribing to the channel. Hopefully we reach our goals really soon. Check out this recommended video, and have yourself a great day. Thanks.